current Secretary of Transportation and former Indiana Mayor Pete Buttigieg, I'm not mayor of Indiana. What was it? South Bend, Indiana, I believe he was the mayor of. Pete Buttigieg had to put a stop once and for all to the absurd and ridiculous talking points about Joe Biden's infrastructure bill, having to explain to ABC's George Stephanopoulos, humans need water to live, which is why plumbing is part of infrastructure. Having to explain, Mayor Pete did, to Fox hosts that electricity is now important enough to Homo sapiens that spending money on the grid as part of infrastructure makes sense. And if you haven't heard the bad faith and or ignorant responses to Biden's infrastructure bill, they have essentially been one of two things. Some people on the right have reacted to Biden's infrastructure bill with the typical, oh, it's too expensive, we can't afford it, what about the debt, what about the deficit type responses that they never give when they're talking about a Republican president going to war. Never, those are never concerns when a Republican president wants to go to war. Then there's a lot of stuff like, this isn't really infrastructure spending, it's something else. Here's an example. South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem said, lots of this stuff isn't infrastructure, it's money for housing and pipes.
On a call with the White House today with all the governors talking about the specifics of this package. And I was shocked by how much doesn't go into infrastructure. It goes into research and development. It goes into housing and pipes and different initiatives, green energy. And it really is not an honest conversation we're having.
So she takes issue with research. How does she imagine we would improve infrastructure without doing research? I don't know. Every infrastructure advancement in human history came thanks to the research that was done before it. When we replace one type of electric grid with another, it's because somewhere in the middle there research was done. When we improve the way that we build bridges, it's because sometime in the interim, research was done. This is like when there's a hurricane and the relief bill includes money to figure out how can we mitigate this being so bad the next time there's another hurricane. And Republicans say some of that money is not really for relief. Right. Well, it's money so that next time it doesn't do as much damage by improving infrastructure or whatever else needs to be done. And of course, pipes, water, that's infrastructure. So here is Mayor Pete Buttigieg on ABC over the weekend explaining to George Stephanopoulos, humans need water to live, which is why plumbing is part of this.
That only about 5% of this bill goes for traditional roads and bridges. You've got 20% caregiving for the elderly, about 13% for investments in like the Green New Deal. So why not focus on that traditional core infrastructure?
Well, let's be clear. There's a lot more than roads and bridges that are part of infrastructure. I heard the governor of South Dakota recently saying this is an infrastructure. It's got money for pipes. Well, we believe that pipes are infrastructure because you need water to live. And too many families now live with the threat of lead poisoning. That's absolutely infrastructure.
So there's that. And then on Fox News, here are Bill Hemmer and Dana Perino asking Mayor Pete, but Secretary, there's all this spending on non-infrastructure stuff. Take a listen.
We crunch the numbers. We find that 5.5% of the $2 trillion, 5.6 of the $2 trillion proposal is only dedicated to roads and bridges. Why is that?
Well, we're talking about roads and bridges. We're talking about rail and transit. We're talking about airports and ports. As you mentioned, we're talking about things like the grid. I don't know why anybody would say it's a mistake to invest in the grid after what we just witnessed in Texas. We saw U.S. citizens living in Texas melting snow in their bathtubs to be able to flush their toilets in the United States of America. That is unacceptable. So yes, infrastructure includes energy infrastructure. You know what else is part of infrastructure now? Broadband. I'm proud of the fact, even though it's a little outside my lane on the transportation side, I'm proud of the fact that we're going to finally get broadband out to every American because we know, especially in rural areas, how much that's cutting people off from opportunity. Good infrastructure planning is always about looking to the future.
Why are they obsessed with this idea that only roads and bridges count as infrastructure? The electrical grid, green energy, plumbing, high-speed internet, this is all infrastructure. And for some of the less ignorant conservatives, there's a bad faith aspect here. There's an analogy here to the Postal Service. Why is it that Republicans want to kneecap the Postal Service? It's because they don't want the government in the business of delivering mail. Now, the Postal Service is a sort of pseudo-government entity, but the point is conservatives want the Postal Service gone so that for-profit companies like DHL, FedEx, and UPS will get more market share. There's a philosophical underpinning to that. Similarly, with this infrastructure thing, many right-wingers see anything the government gets involved in as a loss for private industry. Now, the reality is that it's misguided. When we talk about the government doing infrastructure, this is not, I know that they love to say it is, but the U.S. is not a communist country where most construction work is done by government-owned companies. Most of the infrastructure work will be done by private companies. They will be hired by the government, yes, but it's still going to be work that goes out to private companies. So that's one group. Then you have people who just don't know what's going on. They don't understand the world around them, and they think that the electrical grid really isn't part of infrastructure. And it's disturbing that Mayor Pete has to even explain this stuff to people who you would imagine know about it. The commons. We all benefit from it, and we help maintain it, either directly or through tax money. Clean water, air, access to electricity. In some places, increasingly broadband. These are just examples. And of course, there is nothing more economically stimulative than great infrastructure. Better airports so that people more easily and eagerly come to the United States to do business. Have you seen airports in other parts of the world? Short of, there's a few terminals at a few airports in the United States that are at the caliber of what global airports are. But by and large, our airports are put to shame by airports in other countries. Who will go to stores if the roads are unusable or the bridges are unsafe? This is economically stimulative for the very private businesses that Republicans claim to prioritize and want to support. It's in a sense a really shrewd business move. It's called cost externalization. You're a business. You're able to externalize a bunch of costs for infrastructure that you benefit from. They're building the infrastructure so that customers can go and do business with you with other people's tax money. Like, you would think they would absolutely love it. Republicans should love it. But anytime government is, quote, spending money, they just reflexively are against it. Anytime it's proposed by Democrats, they reflexively are against it. Remember, Democrats voted for both of Trump's COVID stimulus bills. Why? Because even though it was Trump, it was the right thing to do. Yeah, it wasn't big enough. It was too slow. Okay. Flip it. Republicans all of a sudden don't want COVID stimulus when it's Democrats controlling the House, Senate, and the White House. These people are pathetic. These people are pathetic. Many so-called healthy snacks don't taste that great. They don't fill you up. They don't satisfy a craving, which is why you should check out our sponsor, Monk Pack, and their keto nut and seed bars. Delicious sweet snacks with only 1 gram of sugar or less, 2 to 3 grams of net carbs, and just 150 calories. Perfect for the keto or low carb diet, or anybody who just generally tries to eat a low sugar diet like me. I love the Monk Pack keto nut and seed bars. Just a great balance of sweet and salty, soft and chewy, but with a nice crunch from the nuts and seeds. You can get great flavors like caramel, not caramel. Come on, guys. Caramel sea salt dark chocolate, peanut butter dark chocolate. That's my personal favorite. They'll give you all of your money back if you don't love it. Go to monkpack.com. The link is down below, and you'll get 20% off any of their products when you use the coupon code Pakman.